Okay, welcome everyone to the 8th Housing Repairs Online Show and Share and the first one of 2022. So Happy New Year to all our collaborators and supporters. Before I share with you what we're going to cover this morning, let's just remind ourselves of why we do the show and shares. Next slide, please. Okay, so we perform these show and shares to provide an opportunity for the team to celebrate what they've achieved, demo any working software that they've delivered during the sprint, and share any information on the progress made. But most importantly is to give our collaborators and supporters the opportunity to give their feedback and ask questions. Next slide. So what we're going to cover today. In a minute, I'll just remind you who is in the core team, share our vision, and then I'll hand over to Bhavesh and Mesa, who will talk about the key findings from tech spikes we performed in the recent sprint. Then I'll hand over to Fraser Chickett, who will talk about service notifications. So these are the notifications we send to internal and external users of the system, and we'll talk about the mechanism that we use. Then we'll hear from El Villamarte, who will go through our MVP demo. So that will be taking you through the full end-to-end linear journey that enables a user to submit a request for a damaged cupboard in their kitchen. Then I'll give a quick summary of the progress made in the current sprint and our focus for the next. I'll then hand over to Fraser, who will tell you how you can engage with the project, and then you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback on the demo and ask any questions that you may have. Next slide, please, Fraser. So who is in the core team? Well, we have Fraser Chickett, our product owner from Lincoln Council, myself, Paul Clemson, delivery manager from Maytech, Leon Aki, our engagement manager from DLUC Local Digital, funding this project, Bhavesh Patel, our lead engineer from Maytech, Wendy Banks, our business analyst from Lincoln Council, Jayed Omotajo from Southwark Council, El Villamarte, our senior engineer from Maytech, Jim Bowen, representative of the Thistle IT group, and finally Mesa Canoni, engineer from Maytech. So what is our vision? Our vision is to design and build a reusable and accessible online repair reporting tool that requires no login, and most critically, it's what residents prefer to use as it meets their needs. A tool that is integratable with various scheduling systems through open, scalable and accessible APIs, enabling the tool that we hope to be adopted by local authorities across the UK. Next slide. I'll now hand over to Bhavesh and Mesa.
Hi, so I'll quickly talk about the first spike, and I'll give you some context to make sense of it first. So previously, the residents would call the helpline to report a repair, and the customer service agent would generate a repair ID in Universal Housing, which is the housing management system, and then they'd create a repair in DRS, which DRS is the scheduling system, and they'd use this repair ID that was initially created in the housing management system, and this would allow for a link to exist between the housing management system and the scheduling system. So doing it in this order meant that the two can be linked, as an ID generated in UH would be used in DRS, and this is the process for reporting a repair that currently exists. So Housing Repairs Online will allow the residents to book a repair themselves online, and it's important that whatever solution we implement uses the existing processes and maintains existing processes. So this means, for example, that for every repair that is reported in Housing Repairs Online, that it would be reflected in the housing management system and also in DRS, and that link would exist. So the manual generation of a repair ID in Universal Housing, the manual generation of repair ID in Universal Housing to be used in DRS was a manual step by the customer service agents. So we had to think of a solution that would replicate this, where the resident reports the repair online to ensure that the link exists. So we came up with 3 potential solutions. The first was to programmatically generate a repair ID in Universal Housing, and then to use this to create a DRS entry. This would be the ideal solution if an API existed, but UH didn't have an API, and also there were data integrity risks that we weren't willing to take. The second option was to preemptively generate repair IDs for all the properties in universal housing and then store them in the Housing Repairs Online system. And when a repair is booked, we'd use this repair ID, but this would mean that they'd be reporting issues in UH. And then our final option was that we'd use a repair ID generated in not in universal housing, but in our Housing Repairs Online system, and then use this to book a repair in DRS. This now means that a repair wouldn't be reflected in universal housing, and it would make Housing Repairs Online the source of truth. So to mitigate this, the CSA would be notified when a repair is booked, and they'd enter a repair ID into Housing Repairs Online retrospectively. This is done as part of an existing manual process, so we're not adding additional load to customer service agents, but importantly, we're still significantly reducing their workload. And then Bhavesh, do you want to talk about the second spike?
Yes, thank you, Asa. We've mentioned in previous show and shares about Lincoln's change in policy to schedule repairs by area. And the stimulus for this was to improve efficiency in terms of fuel and ordering of materials, etc. This presented some complications or impact to Housing Repairs Online. And we investigated different options as to find the best repair appointment for a given repair. The scheduling by repairs by area is the City of Lincoln Council was divided up into 4 quadrants, and each quadrant can be scheduled for a repair for a period of 3 weeks. This could mean that a resident could be waiting up to 84 days to have a repair scheduled. So we had options to have a DRS add-in, which would present us the first available appointment, which could be up to 84 days in the future. This didn't really fit in with the best user experience that we wanted to provide the residents using our service. Another option was, as kind of Mesa iterated, to have Housing Repairs Online understand repairs by area. Again, this would increase the complexity of the Housing Repairs Online system and would potentially make its reuse at other local authorities quite difficult. And then we had another option of iteratively querying the scheduling system until we had sufficient available appointments to present to the resident from which they could select. This could result in more queries and increased time that the user could be waiting. But we don't think that it will be too impactful, and that's the option we've gone with to maintain a good user experience and to keep the Housing Repairs Online journey focused on the user journey there. Okay, handing over back to you, Fraser.
Cheers, both. So yeah, just wanted to move on to the work that we've done around notifications. In the spirit of the project and the digital declaration, we try to reuse code where it already exists. So obviously made perfect sense for us to look to the GovNotify service in order for us to be able to utilise that to send notifications. We're not doing that just for customers, we're also using that for the CSA notifications that Mesa just mentioned. So we've set this service up, we've created our templates. There's a little example of one down but at the bottom of the screen on there. And we've had some successful tests. We've decided to use the .NET API because we're operating on that framework, and on Azure at the moment it sits nicely. One thing we did want to shout out, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Mace, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been quite easy to get up and running with this. So we've been able to quickly spin this up, get some tests out there. The template side of it was good to set up. The bit that I'm just waiting for at the moment is to make this live, is just the final check from our legal team on the agreement that goes with it, but not too worried about that. One thing we've decided to sort of park at the moment for our MVP is building in anything too complex in terms of error handling. The GovNotify service comes with a really good dashboard, so we're going to be able to utilise that in terms of checking if a message failed to send for any reason, if a telephone number wasn't valid, etc. But something we are looking at doing as well is just returning any errors back to the customer if we can do in the future on there, just to make it clear. But as I say, that's a phase 2. So for now, we'll just be using that dashboard environment. I'll hand over to you. I'll kick this off.
Great. So we're just going to quickly whiz through the things that we have previously covered in other show and shares, i.e. the kind of the beginning of the journey where we narrow down what repairs we accept as a service. I think the video's stuck. We search universal housing to get all those eligible addresses, and now the person can kind of select what their problem is very granularly, and based on these selections we will generate their SOR code. Then the user will also have the opportunity to describe their problem and upload an image. We have covered a lot of this in previous show and tells, so we're kind of whizzing through it quickly here. What Brett Fraser just kind of talked about is will be useful here, because the user gets to choose whether they receive a notification via text message or email, and those would be sent through with GovNotify. And here they would see the available appointments from DRS. Note in this demo, the appointments were mock data. And the most exciting part of this is that when they check their answers and submit, they get a repair ID. And this is the ID that Mesa talked about, that we will be saving into universal housing. And of course, they can go create another repair. Thank you. I think I should also mention that when the repair is saved, we also store it in our own document storage within the Lincoln Azure account, which will enable us to run all sorts of analytics, as well as keeping a track of all the repairs that I've done in universal housing. Thank you. I think I'm passing back to Paul.
Yep. Thanks, El. So a quick summary of the progress made. As you've seen, we've created all the MVP pages to complete the end-to-end linear journey for a kitchen cupboard repair. We performed a couple of tech spikes around UH integration, and now we can support the scheduled repairs by area change. We've also agreed as how the service will be measured, and there are going to be 3 metrics for that. Firstly will be the number of repairs submitted using the online tool, the number of calls that continue to go through to the customer service centre, and finally the time and day on which people submit their repairs, because having the online tool gives the people the opportunity to do that pretty much 24/7. And finally, we fixed some minor bugs in the MVP. Next page, please. Okay, so what will our focus be for the next sprint? Well, we'll continue to test the DRS configuration as we adapt our backend to support the scheduled repairs by area. We'll integrate the scheduling API with DRS. This will enable us to query availability and schedule repair jobs. And we'll continue to build out the MVP for the remaining repair types. And here's just a few pages as examples. Next slide. I'll hand it back to you, Fraser.
Yeah, it's my bi-weekly shout out for anybody wanting to get involved with the project. Please do reach out to us. I think it's previously mentioned, but we've got the website of repairsonlinedigitalfund.com. Please go and have a look on there. We've got loads of information on the background of the project, not just for this phase, but through Discovery Alpha, etc. All these show and shares are on there. And there's a fairly recent video in terms of us doing a quick talk to Newark that's a pretty good summary and overview of the project for anyone who hasn't seen any exposure of it before. I'd suggest having a look at that. And we're also using the hashtag repairs online, so LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. You should be able to find us via that as well. Which I think leads us on to back over to you guys, and if you've got any questions for us at this stage.
Or any feedback on the MVP demo that you've seen today? Any questions at all? Feedback? Be most welcome.
Should we perhaps turn off the recording so people aren't feeling too shy about being on YouTube?
We can do that.